This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
It is 10:08 on the East Coast, 7:08 in Las Vegas, home of the National Association of Broadcasters Convention. And we found out yesterday at the NAB that radio stations who are broadcasting on the new appliances have had a 13% kickstart in audiences. And these are like 400 of us who are up there. And congratulations, because the audience is growing very quickly thanks to Google Home, Alexa, and Echo. And hey, guys, good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Hey,
hey, good morning. It's Rick on the phone, too.
Hey, Rick, how are
Very
you?
good.
I'm well. I'm well, thank you.
Good. Any comments on the market up 400 and the Chinese government blinking? I can't believe
Yes,
this.
it looks like
What a poker
everything is
game.
working out well.
I can't believe that. That's truly amazing. So, Charles, what's up?
Not much. We're up about 320. We did a little bit of liquidating this morning on the up opening. I sold the Intel calls at about $1.40, $1.41. They're currently trading back around $1.20 now. I think they cost us 90 cents. So I just kind of wanted to pare back positions for the rest of the week. I will be out on Thursday and probably Friday, so I take this very seriously. If I can't watch them and I can't quarterback them, I don't really want us in them. So we only have two small positions right now, both of which are, nicely profitable, that I'll put stops in and deal with that. But this market has been just unbelievable. We're now up for the month. Not that I really care one way or the other about it on that short a time frame, but we're still having trouble breaking through the highs right around where we are right now. 24,500 in the Dow and the S&P right around 2645, and NASDAQ. NASDAQ is actually acting a little better because we've got a little bit of the pressure off the big name stocks, the Apple, Netflix, Tesla, NVIDIA, even Facebook, although I don't really want to key on Facebook too much. There will be some pretty important news here this afternoon. I think he goes before the Senate around 2 or 2:30, and I'm just sure that Elizabeth Warren probably has questions for him that have no meaning whatsoever, but get her name out there. But this market is holding up very well.
So, Charles, you used the word pressure. We at Pressure Biosciences love that word.
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, Rick, give us an update.
Oh, man, Rick, I love it how he backed into that thing. Oh, so how are things going at Pressure Bio?
Well, see, Rick,
we
just so that
Boston
you
guys
know,
have to stick together.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Rick, just so that you know, I think that, you keep moving in that direction with those kind of segues, and, we can have you replace our moderator.
You can replace, hey, you can replace me anytime. Go for it.
That's not possible. Not possible.
So
yes, we reported last week. We reported our fourth quarter, and and full fiscal year of 2017, and I've had a number of investors call, and we're very happy. As we know, as Abe Lincoln said, we can't please all the people all the time, but most of my investors called and said, "Great job," because obviously when you put a capsule of a year, it's not just the financial results, which we're very happy with, but it's also the operational and technical results, which we're also extremely happy with. So the fourth quarter of this is for Pressure Biosciences, and the fourth quarter, was our eighth quarter in a row where year over year our quarter increased in revenue, and in most areas, main areas of revenue, counting consumables and instruments. And it was the fourth year in a row where our total revenue increased. So we were happy with those results.
Well, for folks who have not heard you in the past, explain Pressure Biosciences for us.
We are a life science tools company. That means we make instruments, and they have associated consumables. We sell these instruments to the research scientists all over the world. We have we've pretty much got instruments in all areas of in Asia, in Europe, in Australia and New Zealand, and of course throughout the North and Central and South Americas. We're a small company. We're growing. We're growing well. As I said, this is our fourth year in a row where our total revenue increased over the previous year. Our instruments are used by research scientists, and very important part of research, and that's to break open cells. And those cells can be human, animal, plant, microbes. They could be normal, cancer, precancer. They can be viruses, bacteria, fungus. It doesn't matter. You need to get inside the cell and get out all those amazing biomolecules, the DNA and the proteins and the RNA and the lipids. And this is what we study. This is where the next cure, the next preventive strategy, the next vaccine is going to come from. And it comes from studying thousands upon tens of thousands of these cells, looking for something that's different among people that maybe have an affliction or people that are able to recover versus people that can't. We're looking for something that's different. So it's very, very important how we open up those cells, and then what happens after that is all of the studies of the molecules. But it starts by breaking open the cells in a very, very efficacious and high-quality way so you can start to study those molecules. And that's what we do. We sell an instrument that is totally different than anything on the market. Guys, everything on the market is mechanical for the most part. We beat up the cells. This is how I was taught. I was working at Harvard Medical School in research for 13 years to start my career, 100 years ago, and we were taught beat up the cell to get it open. That's the last thing you want to do is beat up the cell, because you can beat up the things in the cell that you want to get out and study. So we treat the cell like a sponge, and we squeeze it with pressure. We squeeze it. We put it inside of a small pressure chamber that's in our instrument, and we can control the pressure within about 100 psi, pounds per square inch. We go from 500 pounds per square inch in that pressure chamber all the way up to 45,000 pounds per square inch, which is it's almost 3 times the pressure at the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean, and we can control it. And once you find out how much pressure you need to squeeze a cell to break it, a specific type of cell, you can dial in that pressure, and our patents are in turning that pressure on and off, pressure cycling. And it's very new, very exciting, and it's a battle to change a paradigm that's existed, beating up cells for 50 years, but we're getting there, guys. We are getting there.
Well, it just sounds so gee whiz, the way you're explaining this, because it has been done so differently for the last 50 years.
It has been, and that was one of the things that took so long to get going, was going into researchers, and I'm a scientist, and I can say that scientists by nature are very stubborn. We're taught to not look at a lot of variables. We're taught to not change a lot of things because you don't want to have a lot of variables. And so when you go into a scientist and they think that the method they were taught by their mentor to break open a cell is the right way because their mentor did it for 20 years, it's tough to have them change. And so we went after the key opinion leaders around the world. We have some of the top protein scientists in the world now using our methods. In fact, Dr. Tom Conrads out of Arlington, Virginia, is in Germany this week, and tomorrow we'll be presenting at a major show called Analytica. It happens every 2 years, and he's going to be giving a presentation that is talking about a number of things he's doing with the cells, but he's going to talk about how he uses our system to break open those cells. So it's exciting, and I think part of this is why we had such a great 2017, both financially in the numbers that we sent out a few days ago, as well as operationally.
That Analytica doesn't have anything to do with the Russians, does it? I mean, is that...
Not at all.
I'm just kidding.
Not at all.
So this is a big conference in Germany?
It's a big conference in Munich, Germany, and it's held every 2 years. And a lot of people go from the States, and it is a very large conference. I believe it's in the vicinity of maybe 18 to 20,000 people attending this conference. And we will have our distributor throughout all of Europe there, and they'll be supporting Dr. Conrads, and of course they'll be seeing a lot of their customers and potential customers. So it's an exciting time for us, and then our big show is coming up in the first few days of June, which will be in San Diego, and that's the American Society for Mass Spectrometry. Mass spectrometry is a method that's pretty much the gold standard that scientists use to try to understand what makes up the composition of a protein. They put it into a mass spectrometer and they read it. And so most of our customers, I'd say of our close to 180 customers now, and we have over 300 instruments in their labs, many of them, probably over half, are using mass spectrometers. We sit in front of a mass spectrometer, we open up the cell, we release the protein, then we break the protein down to tiny, what we call amino acids and peptides, and those go into the mass spectrometer and get read. So we work in conjunction with the mass spectrometer, and that's a $500,000, $1 million machine, and ours is $50,000, and we think our $50,000 machine makes the $500,000 machine better.
Certainly, just a hair more economical. That's for sure. Wow, that's truly amazing. Say last year when you went to these conventions, what was the reaction from folks that you were talking to?
Reaction is great because remember last year was the first time we were showing our new instrument. We've been in business about 10 years. About a year and a half ago, we developed a new instrument that was computerized. And our previous instrument, which we'd had for the previous 7 or 8 years, was run by a microprocessor, so it was limited in its functions. Still got the pressure, still broke open cells, and got really high-quality molecules out to be studied. But the scientist was limited in how he or she could open up the cell and do what they wanted to do. Our new instrument now, which we call the Extreme, is an instrument that was very well received last year, and it's one of the reasons that our instrument sales increased 55% in the fourth quarter. So in the fourth quarter of 2017, we showed a 55% increase in the sale of our instruments and a 20% increase in the sale of consumables. And for the year, we showed a 21% increase in instruments, and consumables are up 30%. So this doesn't happen just by luck. This happened, and I can say this happened with basically one salesperson in the field. And as you guys know, we've added 4 new salespeople. We've never really had for years we've never had a sales department of more than 1, and now we have a sales department of 5. So we have this brand new instrument. We have 5 salespeople, 4 of them in the field, and 1 heading it up, and very excited about what they can do in spreading the word and getting the word out.
That's phenomenal, Rick. What markets are you looking at to really grow, say, outside of the U.S.?
Well, actually, inside and outside, it would be the same.
Okay.
But that's a good question. We're basically at this point we have 3 different business groups, even though we're a small company of 14, of which by going from 9 to 14 by hiring 4 salespeople and 1 scientist in the last few months. But we believe our new instrument, with the ability to hold on and to download what happens to the sample in the pressure chamber onto a USB drive or onto a hard disk, is so new and so important that there's companies that could never use us because there was no download availability up to a year ago. You had to write everything down, and that doesn't cut it with when FDA is checking on you and looking for what you did in developing this drug or this vaccine. Now with the new instrument, it's downloadable, so that's been a major change. So we're going after the biopharmaceutical companies. It was up to last year the main target were the research labs. It could be government, it could be academic, it could be biopharm, but they were the research labs, breaking open cells to do basic research. Now we're still doing that, but now we're going after the biopharmaceutical manufacturing companies, the companies that are making the drugs. Remember, 20 years ago, almost all drugs were chemical in nature. Now, almost all drugs are biologic in nature. We have many drugs that are developed that are protein-based, and because of that, there has to be a lot of work done to make sure the protein is exactly right, doesn't have any contaminants, is the right structure, has the right function. Our instrument can play a key role in that, our new instrument. So we've had very good luck in selling the new instrument to a couple of biopharmaceutical companies. Now it's time with the new sales team to focus on all the other. There's another 100, 200 biopharmaceutical companies that they really don't know we exist. And we need to go after them and show them the data from key opinion leaders, show them what several biopharma companies, multi-billion-dollar companies are doing with our instrument. And we're excited about what we think will come from that.
Well, I would think the downloadable aspect would be a game changer for you.
It is. You're absolutely right. It is a game changer. That's been an Achilles heel for us for a number of years. When we started this, many instruments 10 years ago were just starting to get computerized, and we're a small company. To make that change was a change that we were offered by several manufacturing companies, equipment manufacturing companies, to design and develop a new instrument for $1 million. We couldn't afford that as a small company. So what we did in our spare time, because I have such phenomenal engineers and scientists, even though there's only been 9 of us, I've hired 1,000 people probably in my career in 4 companies I've started, and I've got some of the top engineers and scientists I've ever been blessed to work with, working with us now in our small company. They're committed with what we're doing. They've been with me. Most of my staff has been with me now 10 or 11 years, the entire time since I started the company. And these guys are absolutely superb. So in our spare time, I say that tongue-in-cheek, we developed this whole new extreme instrument that was computerized, which gives so many more bells and whistles, particularly the download capability. It's changed our company. It has absolutely changed our future, no doubt about that, and that's what's exciting. That's why we went out and said, okay, it's time to bite the bullet, hire a sales force, and let's do this proactively. If we can, in a reactive sense, from people calling us, do a couple of million in sales, what will we be able to do over the next few years when we're proactively selling what we've got? So we're excited.
Rick, can the instruments you already have in the field, can they be retrofitted with the download capabilities?
Another good question. Not really. So what we've done, and this is just starting, is we're putting out a program where they can trade in their older instrument for the newer instrument, and we will give them a nice trade-in value. Nice for them and very nice for us, I might say. And we have the capability of internally upgrading to something in between the old instrument and the brand new Extreme. We have a number of customers who have limited budgets, and they just can't. Our machine costs $49,900, and they can't afford that. The old machine costs $29,000. So we could take the used machines, upgrade them, and make them available to scientists who just can't afford a $50,000 machine at this point, but they can afford maybe a used machine for $25,000. It doesn't have all the capabilities, but it'll get them started. So it's a win-win. So that's what we're starting. Excited about that program.
Wow, that sounds absolutely amazing. Sounds amazing.
Yeah. And I should end it by saying that we've talked about before, we purchased all the assets, which were primarily intellectual property, from a company called Barrowfold just a couple of months ago, and they give us ability to get into the biopharmaceutical contract research business because there are a number of biopharm companies that have protein drugs that have issues with the drugs that we believe we can help them by using the patented technology that we bought from Barrowfold. And we also, I think our listeners and investors should be keenly aware that we think we're making great strides in the other new technology of ours called Ultra Shear. We've talked about this. Go into Starbucks, find the Evolution juice, and right in the front it says high-pressure process. They don't add chemicals. It's clean label. No chemicals, no additives. They put it under pressure to kill the bacteria. That was pioneered by my head of engineering, Dr. Edmund Ting. He and the U.S. Army pioneered that 20 years ago. So we have a new technology called Ultra Shear, which we think has just as much potential as high-pressure processing in many different areas, not just in food, and it does in food, but outside of food, in nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals, a number of areas. So I think listeners should be keenly aware that we think that there's a number of things going on that might be very interesting to them in the short term.
Well, Rick Schumacher, wealth of information as always. Congratulations on the huge growth and both staff-wise and the bottom line as well. So keep it growing at Pressure Biosciences.
Will do, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
The Ultra Shear, do you sell that or lease it?
Well, the Ultra Shear is brand new, and it is not run on our existing instrument, so we're developing a new instrument in our spare time. We're developing a new instrument. Right now, high-pressure processing, which is not Ultra Shear, it's an analogous technology. High-pressure processing is a $10 billion with a B, a $10 billion business. A lot of consumers have no idea that a lot of the food they buy, the guacamole and the turkey and the baby food that they buy in the supermarket, especially if you find it in that clear plastic bag, you take a look and see if you can see any nitrates, sulfates, and salts in it. You often do not. Why? Because it's pressurized. It's high-pressure process, but they don't have to label it that way. So we thank Starbucks for labeling theirs high-pressure process. We are developing an analogous method that we believe can be used in food, and especially food dairy products that cannot be high-pressure processed. I can't go into it technically, but it cannot be high-pressure processed. It won't work, but it will work through Ultra Shear. So we're looking at dairy products. It's a whole new instrument. We're very excited about it. We're developing it internally. We have 2 patents already issued and many more patents applied for all around the world. So I think our investors should keep a keen ear to where we're going with Ultra Shear technology.
So can we expect to get a half a penny on each one of those Starbucks drinks going forward?
Can't do it on Starbucks because that was a technology that Dr. Ting and the Army developed and basically gave up the patents for. But
Ouch.
Ultra Shear, different. Ultra Shear is different. So if you've got products, and like I say, one very important area would be dairy products. Think of all the liquid cheese. Think of milk. Think of the dairy products that are pasteurized. Pasteurization works, but it's putting heat on food is not the best thing. There's other ways, but people are using infrared light and things like that. But who wants to use ultraviolets and things and chemicals? We have a way of using Mother Nature but we add a shearing. It causes the material to be stressed and sheared at the end, which does it, within limits, it can do a tremendous job of sterilizing the material, but at the same time of making it so that it's a clean label. You don't have to add anything to keep the bacteria load down. So more to come on that. I look forward to another invite for your show, because we have now with the Ultra Shear, which we're really focused on at this time right now, as well as the Barrefold patents in the contract manufacturing area, and our brand new instrument. We have a lot on our plate for a small company of 14.
So Rick, are you taking any time off to see the Red Sox?
That's an interesting question. I went to opening day, which was 13 innings, and we came back to win it. A very good friend of mine went the other day and saw them come back with six runs, 2 outs in the 8th. So we're excited about the Sox, but, the so-called evil empire is coming in today, tomorrow, and the next day. Yeah. Always fun when the Yankees come to town. Yankees, Red Sox, always fun. Even if we don't win, but I think we will. It's always fun.
Okay. Good stuff. Rick Schumacher, Pressure Biosciences. Wow, great update, and keep it going.
Will do, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. Good luck to everybody. And, Charlie, maybe we'll go see a Red Sox game.
Okay, works for me.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Do we have another guest, Mike?
I haven't heard from Ben Nolan.
Can you hear me? I'm on.
He's on.
Good.
Mike.
Very good, Ben. Wanted to talk about. Go ahead, Ben.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. So, Mike asked me. I'm the shipping analyst and energy infrastructure analyst at Stifel, and Mike asked me to talk about one of the companies that I work with called Tellurian, and the ticker is TELL, so TELL. And just in full disclosure, I don't own the stock. Our firm hasn't done any banking business with the stock, but it is a name that I like from the perspective of enormous upside relative to the downside. And by way of background, the company is in the LNG business, or the liquefied natural gas business, and effectively the landscape is such that natural gas is obviously a much cleaner or has much less emissions than other things like coal or oil, and so increasingly around the world there's been a real push by utilities and others to shift towards natural gas. The problem is that there are a lot of areas that have a lot of natural gas, like the U.S. Gulf Coast, for instance, or West Africa or Australia, which aren't very close to the places of demand, like China or Japan or Korea or mainland Europe, and it doesn't make sense to build a pipeline to those places. But natural gas is not as easy to move as is things like oil or coal. And so what they have to do is they have to cool it to a point of minus 260 degrees in order to condense it down into a liquid, and then they can put it on a ship and then send it to whoever happens to need it. But that's a very expensive process, and so it takes a long time to develop these liquefaction plants, is what they're called, and an awful lot of capital. And so companies that do this have to consider very carefully, whether or not the economics are going to ultimately make sense. Tellurian is in that business. They have not yet built their facility. The idea is to build a very large facility in Louisiana to export gas from places like the Haynesville Shale in Louisiana or the Permian Basin out in West Texas, which U.S. natural gas prices are less than $3 today. Even in the seasonally softer time of the year, prices in Asia are about $8. So even after the expense of turning the gas into a liquid, and shipping it all the way to Asia, there still can be a nice profit made. However, it's still for Tellurian, their project would be about $15 billion. So that's a lot of money to spend unless you know you're going to make a profit. The same is true for any of the other companies. Some similar companies might be something like Cheniere, and the ticker on that one is LNG. And so traditionally, the companies in this business have wanted long-term 20-year contracts at guaranteed margins, such that they know that they can spend their $15 billion and make some decent level of return on it over the years. The problem is, if, let's say, natural gas prices in the United States were to go up substantially, and you're a buyer in China or something, and you're committed to paying the U.S. natural gas prices plus the cost to turn it into a liquid and ship it over, and then all of a sudden those natural gas prices go up, and you're committed to doing that for 20 years. It can be a very expensive and costly process. So the buyers have had, in recent years, some hesitancy to sign up for those long-term contracts, which has slowed the development of this business. Still, the LNG business is something that is on pace to grow anywhere from 6 to 10% per year for at least the next probably decade, and very likely even beyond that. Although getting buyers to actually agree to take on these large financial commitments has been a challenge. That's where Tellurian comes in. Tellurian's management team, it's two guys, one by the name of Sharif Suki and the other by the name of Martin Houston. Sharif Suki is the mastermind behind Cheniere, which is the sort of the bellwether for U.S. LNG projects. Martin Houston used to run a company called British Gas, which was sold to Shell, and they were and are still the world leaders in LNG. So two very extremely reputable guys. After they left their respective firms, they came together to develop this new concept where they're still producing the LNG in the traditional way, making it very cold, and it's still very expensive. But rather than trying to get long-term 20-year contracts from utility companies in Japan or Korea or elsewhere, what they're trying to do is get those same buyers to actually buy into the project itself. Furthermore, in order to hedge the risk of higher natural gas prices, the company is going out and actually buying gas in the ground. So they already have bought some acreage in Haynesville. They have aspirations of buying more. They're looking to build a pipeline to West Texas into Louisiana in order to access some of the wealth of gas that's over there as well. With the idea being that if you own the gas and you bought it cheaply, it doesn't matter if everybody else's natural gas prices go up, so long as you can produce it at a reasonable cost and you bought in at a low enough price, you can guarantee those utilities that bought into your project, they're not ever going to have to pay more than, say, $6 for their gas, which is it's a new concept for a lot of buyers, but it certainly is catching some momentum. Now, what does the company get for this? So they're selling down equity stakes in their business, and effectively they'll get an equity carry, or roughly about a third of the production that they generate out of this. They get to keep in order to do this going forward, and that's debt-free, so they'll own it without any debt. They won't need to raise any more equity as long as things go to plan. And ultimately, this plant should generate cash flow once it's fully up and running of about $2 billion per year. And it could certainly be higher than that if natural gas prices are higher than that. So you have $2 billion of cash flow into perpetuity, free and clear on your current base of shares. There is definitely some execution risk in order to get there. They need all of this to happen in a reasonably decent amount of time. They need to get the buyers to be comfortable with it. But if they're successful, you could go from what is close to an $8 stock today, and that could that could, in the next, call it 3 or 4 years, be worth 10 times what it is. You put a multiple on that $2 billion of cash flow of, let's put it at a 10% discount, right? You have a $20 billion market cap company. So it has enormous upside potential, with the risk that maybe this thing doesn't materialize the way they think it will. Maybe it takes longer than they think that it will. So your downside, realistically, is they're not able to make it work, and it could be no value left in the equity from an $8 price today. Your upside is the process that they're undertaking and seem to be experiencing really strong momentum with continues, and you have 10 times your money. So this is not for the faint of heart. To be clear, it will go one of those two ways. But in our view, the upside potential relative to where you can buy into it now outweighs the risk for particular investors who can handle that level of volatility.
Wouldn't the shipping companies, the tanker companies, be like a natural partner for this company?
They would. I would say one of the challenges is that it's still a lot of money. So this is going to altogether, including all of the buying all the real estate with the gas in it and the pipelines and everything else. You're talking about a multi-billion-dollar project here. So it lends itself best to companies that have very deep pockets, and that's another advantage that you have here. A Japanese utility, for instance, can borrow at almost no cost of debt. And so if they were to come in and provide or buy into the project and utilize their own balance sheet with effectively zero cost of debt, that's better than Tellurian or one of their competitors trying to fund the entire project on their own balance sheet and go out and get project financing at 6 or 7%. So you're introducing a lower cost of capital into this model as well. The shipping companies are probably a little higher cost of capital. So I would say the best partners, the shipping companies are obviously going to be needed to move the cargo, but the best partners here are probably guys like Asian utilities, national oil companies who buy and trade this, even oil majors. It's certainly possible. Total actually already has a stake in the company, so somebody like that, or perhaps even commodity traders, guys like Glencore or the like.
Yeah, and people don't remember that the way that Sharif financed most of his big dollar items was with contracts when the stock was $3 and $4, with contracts with sovereigns to take, to take the gas.
That's right, and
the cost of money was, not negligible, but not extreme, obviously. And it took 2 years, but actually it took about 3.5 years. But the stock did go from 3 to 60. I mean, that's certainly worth waiting for.
Right, and I think they're trying to recreate that model in a slightly different way, but still, I know that some of their prospective counterparties are the Saudis, for instance,
right.
Where, strangely enough, Saudi Arabia has a wealth of oil but very little gas, and because they don't get along so well with some of their neighbors like Qatar, which is very gas rich, they would be looking to actually buy gas from the United States while the Qataris are producing it right next door and then shipping it on to somewhere else. So yeah, I think the timeline that you should. I spent several days with the company last week actually, and the timeline that they're working under is probably within the next 30 to 45 days. They should have a pretty good level of expressions of interest from their buyers. They're currently running a sales process for to win or win contracts effectively, but they'll have a pretty good sense in the next 30 to 45 days of where things stand, and they expect to have the first phase. This is call it a 28 million ton per year project. It will be done in several phases. The first phase is 11 million tons, of which they need to sell 8, and they get to keep 3. And they expect that first 8 to be fully subscribed by the end of the summer, after which they'll use the proceeds of some of those sales to go out and buy gas-producing acreage, and then they are on pace to receive formal governmental approval from the FERC around the end of the year, so they would start construction very early next year if all goes to plan. And I would say that the important thing here is once you are able to get off the ground with phase 1 or in the process of the first phase of this, it is much easier to expand upward. And that's what Cheniere did. Once you already have pipes in the ground and proof of concept and everything else, you're able to expand quickly, and the economics become much more attractive on the back end, which is how you can ultimately get to that cash flow that, probably on the low end is something like $2 billion a year. On the high end, theoretically it could be double that in good years.
So are there existing gas pipelines from Permian and various areas of Louisiana to where this site would be?
Well, there's the Gulf Coast in particular is a web of gas pipelines. So
Right.
There are a number of gas pipelines, including especially in Louisiana, which is where Henry Hub is. It's the basis, the primary basis for natural gas trading in the United States. However, one of the big challenges that a lot of oil and gas producers say in West Texas are facing is given fracking and horizontal drilling, that's been a real hotbed of oil production activity. The problem is that a lot of the oil that they're finding and developing in West Texas comes with associated gas, or they're also producing gas with it, and that has pretty substantially outstripped the capacity of the existing pipelines to be able to take it away. And you can only flare gas for about 30 days. In other words, burn the gas that's coming out in order to produce the oil. If you don't do something to get that gas to go somewhere else, then you're not going to be able to produce the oil. So at the moment, in West Texas in particular, there's a real rush to develop pipelines that might go to South Texas or go to East Texas, Louisiana, or elsewhere in order to relieve the backfill of gas that is potentially threatening the growth of oil production. So it's almost as though the oil and gas producers, this is a byproduct, and they're just trying to, almost like a waste. They'd almost pay someone to take it away and not even be paid for the gas. Ultimately, I'm sure they'd like to make some money on it, but that's the dynamic, that you can right now access gas in Waha, which is the main trading hub in West Texas, and gas in Louisiana is $2.75. In Waha, it's $1 less than that, so almost free.
And we had a guest on who's been on a bunch of times with us, Tim Connolly, who was in the Permian in that business, and the last time that he was on, he made it very clear, the amount of gas that they're flaring is monumental. It's almost just an inconvenience.
That's right, and strangely enough, places like China can't get enough gas. Right. Last year, their LNG imports were up almost 50%. And they're building new import terminals, and globally last year production of LNG went up 11%, and despite that, during the winter when things were really cold, we had a multi-year high in gas prices. So not only did the market absorb 11% incremental or LNG production, primarily in Asia, but there was demand for even more. So you have this enormous amount of, call it stranded gas or low-priced gas in places like the United States. There's other places around the world where that's a similar case. And this voracious appetite to be able to buy it in places like China, it's just a matter of the buyers and the sellers coming together, and then the necessary infrastructure being put into place by guys like Tellurian in order to facilitate that.
Would the Chinese be willing to kick in for some of that pipeline?
Yeah, I would say clearly that would be a target of Tellurian. They would like probably some of the Chinese oil majors to participate in the development of their facility. I think they're not exclusively focused on China, but certainly that's an area where it makes an awful lot of sense. Similarly, there's a lot of other places around the world, again, largely in Asia, but the Koreans or the Indians or the Japanese or the Pakistanis or wherever, a lot of places around the world have a very high appetite for U.S. natural gas, and it's just matching that appetite with their ability to pay for it.
Yeah, Clerk, I'm sure that the Chinese would be happy to dump some pipeline here in the U.S., some of the actual materials to build the pipeline.
Well, they were talking. They were talking at one point about buying all of our harbors on the West Coast. So why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. What the heck? Oh man.
Yeah, I'm sure. And that incidentally, there's obviously been a lot of talk about tariffs and steel tariffs and that sort of thing, but. Secretary Wilbur Ross, sort of in a kind of a sneaky, backhanded way, said, "Oh, but by the way, if the Chinese decide to buy natural gas or LNG from the United States, that would go a long way towards closing the imbalance, the trade imbalance,
right.
and it certainly would make us less aggressive from a tariff perspective." So I think that's one of the tools in the tool chest. You get the Chinese to agree to buy some of this natural gas out of the United States, and maybe some of this tariff talk isn't quite so noisy.
Well, I just find it.
Well, you clearly have a guy who knows his way around these sovereigns as well as knowing his way around the business in Sharif.
That's right.
I mean, he just did a monumental job with Cheniere.
That's right. That's right. And it's less well known, but Martin Houston from BG really, with more financial backing, admittedly, but really grew that to be the premier LNG company in the world prior to being sold to Shell, and now Shell is the premier LNG company.
And the number of times that I saw write-ups about how Cheniere could not possibly survive were amazing. I mean, every time you turned around, somebody would say, the debt level is too high, they have no sales, it's capital intensive, where are they going to get it? Well, where they got it was when Spain said, we'll take X amount and here's the purchase order. They turned around and funded it.
That's
I think Spain was the first one, but there were several sovereigns. That came in that way. And, people also don't understand or don't think about the fact that LNG is not necessarily for heating. It's for, power generation. It's for, there's more, I don't know what the number is, but I'm going to assume that there's almost as much or maybe more need for the LNG in the summer months when you're running air conditioners on electricity. So,
that's right. The need is most acute in the winter in the northern hemisphere, but you're right. Actually, one of the bigger buyers of LNG is the Middle East. Again, strangely enough, but the United Arab Emirates or Kuwait, different places, Jordan, they all buy it because it gets really hot in the summer, and you have to those power plants need fuel from somewhere. So. To turn the air conditioners on.
Have most of the power plants around the world switched to LNG?
It's a gradual process. You're definitely that is certainly the trend away from, depending on the region, but away from coal primarily, and then to a lesser extent nuclear. But that said, there's still, depending on the country, there still is an awful lot of coal-fired power production, or especially coal-fired power production. So there's ample room not only to grow into increased level of, let's say, power consumption around the world, but as a substitute effect for coal or nuclear. And the other important thing is, in places like Europe, one of the primary providers of natural gas into the European continent is Russia, or Gazprom, effectively. And given all the things that are going on in that part of the world, there's a big push to find at least an alternative to having to buy natural gas from Russia in order to heat your homes or keep the lights on.
That's amazing. Stock symbol, once again?
TELL.
TELL. And which market is she in?
Oh boy, you had to ask. It's either the Nasdaq or the NYSE. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, but it's one of the biggies anyway. So
yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, hey, don't be a stranger, and give us an update when we get a little bit closer. This sounds very, very exciting. The name of the company again?
Tellurian.
Tellurian. Okay. Very cool.
Tellurian.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the update from Stifel. And once again, don't be a stranger here on Money Info with Mike King in Las Vegas, Charles Moskowitz in Boston, and maybe Charles can work on a game with Rick at Fisher Bioscience as well. He's at it at Fenway Park. WPSL Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com. Webcaster to the world, WPSL on Echo, Alexa, and Google Home.